Hey everyone, it's LaShawn and I'm here to give an update on my moss pole progress. So let's talk moss poles. So it's been about a month since I've actually started this particular moss pole. As you all know, I have 3 successful moss poles, and from water propagation for about 2 weeks, which I did in April, and then I transferred it to soil for about 2 weeks, which I did in mid-May. And then about May 23rd is when I actually started this particular moss pole. And so it's been just about a month, and the leaves are starting to size up. Take a look at these leaves. Take a look at them. Wow. 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 They are looking amazing. So we started with about a 3.5 to 4 inch leaves on the vines that I selected. I wanted to have really a nice vine, which I knew would size up. And so if you look at these initial leaves, you'll see that they are about 3.5 to 4 inches. And so it started with those two, and then you can quickly see that it downsized. So if you look at these leaves, again, these are about 3.5 to 4 inches. And then you look at these, you can immediately see that they just dropped in half. And so these were what was produced when it was in water. Again, just immediately sized down. But it was still doing well. It was still producing great leaves. And on or about here is when I put it into soil for a couple of weeks. I had about 2 inches of growth, root growth at that point. So I put it into soil. So again, still not producing great leaves, but you could see it's starting to kind of size up a little bit. If you look at this one compared to this one, and even this one is looking a little bit bigger. And then I actually think I put it in on the moss pole with about this leaf. And even the first leaf, I started to see a little bit of sizing up, but I noticed that there was aerial roots that were starting to attach. And so right about here is when I have some attachment with the aerial roots. And you could see immediately, I feel like that was the trigger for this sizing up. And then here you go, another aerial root. And this one you can kind of really see because it had to do some reaching to get in there. But you see that is the beginning of this huge size up. And we start to see, like, right away, here's the first leaf that hit 4 inches. This one is a little bit beyond 4 inches. And this is the most recent one. Let me zoom out a little bit. This is the one that just came last week, and it hasn't even fully finished. I mean, it's only been a couple of days since it really fully opened, and I can tell by next week, it's going to be larger than 4.5 inches. And already we have another one that is coming already. This one by next week will be starting to unravel. And so a lot has happened. I mean, it's definitely, you could see already another aerial root right here. Let me just zoom in so you can see it. Another aerial root right here that's growing into the moss. And so it is really starting to take hold. Very excited about it. And excited to see how much more that the bigger that the leaves will get. You've seen those videos on YouTube of other people who have grown pothos, and the leaves can get huge. And so at some point, at growing a leaf a week, I have about another 2 weeks before I'll have to add another pole on. Right now we're at the second pole. And so at that point, I'll let the third pole get fully leaf, and then I'll do a chop, and I'll basically be chopping it about here. And so this part down will go, and then this part, the top 2 poles will stay, and I'll add the third pole. And then at that point, I'll probably do a chop at 2 poles once that third pole fills up again, because then these will be my largest leaves at that point, because these will be removed, and it'll only be, it'll be this size and larger. So what did I do? What have I been doing over the last month? Well, I will tell you, one of the things that I have been doing is I've been making sure that I'm using this grafting tape. I don't know if you can see it, but it's basically like a saran wrap type tape that I've been doing. And I put it around the nodes to secure them close to the moss so it's easy for them to attach. And I've taken some of them off, but I pretty much find the nodes and I put them on. I have one here that didn't attach, so I readjusted it and put it back. We'll see what happens. I had one here. I took that one off. And then I want to also secure this. So I put some up here because I noticed that it attached right here and it was going this way. And I want to make sure that as it grows, that it doesn't grow off, that it grows so that the nodes can continue to attach into the moss. So I positioned it and I re-secured it. So I've been using some grafting tape. The grafting tape also helps to secure the moisture into that area. It keeps the moss moist longer. The moist does tend to dry out a lot, so you do have to constantly, check on it and make sure that you spray it and, are wetting it. I also have it in this window. I think this is a northeast facing window, so it gets early morning sun. You want to be a little bit careful because it will start to grow like green moss on the inside a little bit. So I try to face the clear part back and the leaves towards the window. But you want to just monitor that because at some point it can get a little bit, it can get warm and you don't want the leaves to burn. But this early morning sun has worked very well. This has pretty much been the location for this particular moss pole since it started. So yeah, and then again, I make sure that I keep the moss wet, which leads me to another issue that I have just recently addressed that I want to talk about, which is, again, the moss dries out really quickly. You have to make sure that you're spraying it to keep it wet because that also allows the aerial roots to get the nutrients that it needs and that so they can continue to grow. But the soil, on the other hand, does not do well because while the moss dries out quick, the soil stays moist. So last week, I actually switched out the soil. I had a non-peat soil mix mixed with perlite, about 50-50 mix. And it was holding still a lot of moisture and it wasn't affecting the plant so much. I mean, the leaves were doing fine. But it was attracting a lot of fungus gnats. And so I was like, this is not a good recipe for success. So I ended up switching out for this Soul Soils Houseplant Chunky Mix. Let me just turn this way so you could see it a little bit better. And so I switched out for this. And one of the things that I noticed about this is, unlike the soil, this also dries really quick. Just as quick as the moss pole. So it really is a great mix. I do wish that I would have mixed it with soil a little bit so it could have a little bit more moisture retention, but not a huge deal. And the other thing that I did do is, again, because the moss poles do dry out a little bit quick, and I want to get to a point where I can maybe be watering, once a week. I'm not there yet, but I added some wicking strings. And so I started out with this string, and I'm going to try to see if I can zoom into it a little bit. But basically it is a wicking string, but it's twisted. It's got a little twist to it. And what I noticed is that it does the job, but it doesn't work as well as I thought it would work. And so I did a little bit of research and I swapped out for this. It's a little bit of a smaller thread, but it doesn't have that twist. It has another threading mechanism, but anyway, it works much better. And so I didn't remove the first thread. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that the first thread is here. The first thread is on this side. It's here. I left it in place and I just added the newer thread on this side. And so I have both threads I have both threads going up. And I've been using my propagation tube. So if you look right here, you'll see the propagation tube. I have both the threads in there, and then I have them kind of sitting in the water. But because again, the threads tend to only do about 7-8 inches up. So I also added another propagation tube and put thread at the top. And so what that does is, and let me just zoom out so you can see the whole thing. What that actually does is it allows the top to bring this water down halfway, and then the bottom bring the water up the other way. And so far, it's only been a couple of days. I just did this the other day. It's been working well. The moss is staying not wet, it's staying moist. And so we'll see. At this point, I have been filling them about once a day. And I think I'm going to try to reduce that a little bit. I'm going to try every other day, and we'll see, what happens. And so, we'll go from there. So anyway, that's the latest change that I made, is adding this wicking thread. I'm hoping that will continue to help and make it require a little bit less maintenance than it's required in the past. But I'm really proud of what has happened. Again, leveling up from a 2-inch leaf to a 4.5-inch leaf. I think it's great progress in the course of a month. And like I said, at this point, it's growing a leaf a week, which I also think is really great progress. So I'm going to continue, and I'll give another update. I have 2 other moss poles, and they are doing equally as well. They also have 4-inch leaves at this point. And they are also producing about a leaf a week and a half or so. So not as aggressive as this one. They also are all on their second moss pole. This one is close to its third moss pole, while the other ones are maybe at the beginning of their second. So they're a little bit behind this one. But still, again, they're already at 4.5-inch leaves. And some of them even span wider than this. So they're doing really, really well. I'm very excited, and I'll continue to give you updates. But yeah, stay tuned for more.